Thank you so much, Vivek. Um, just, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, great. So, hi everyone, and greetings from Geneva. Pleasure to join you virtually. I will indeed introduce our team and our work on ICT statistics, and my colleagues will then go into more specific aspect of our work after me. Let me start, and I'll share my screen if I manage. Um, there we go. So, can you see the screen now? Or?
Yes, I can.
Right. So let me say a few words about universal and meaningful connectivity, which is a concept that has been very present in the past couple of years at ITU. Universal and meaningful connectivity is the possibility for everyone to enjoy a safe, satisfying, enriching, productive, and affordable online experience. So that's the definition of this concept, and it is now one of the strategic goals of ITU, because connecting everyone, as of today, connecting everyone is no longer enough. Universal connectivity without meaningful connectivity does not bring about the economic and social transformations that we expect. Meaningful connectivity combined with universal connectivity will allow to leverage the potential of the internet and of connectivity to its full potential. So that's why it is so important, and it is now a policy imperative for all the countries. And in parallel to this policy imperative, we must also tackle the measurement challenge, because measuring, who is connected is no longer enough. The challenge of measurement has become bigger with this new concept, with the adoption of this new concept, because now we also need to look at how well people are connected to the internet, and how meaningful the connectivity is. And this makes the measurement challenge even more bigger. And we heard about the importance of data from Yevgeny before. Without data, we are lost, because data tell us where we are, where we were, where we need to be. Data tell us what works and what doesn't work. So it is an essential piece of information for any decision maker. So I wanted to say a few words about how we tackle this challenge. So at ITU, so we are pretty much present across the whole data lifecycle, as we call it. So from setting the standards, what do we need to collect? What kind of indicator, what kind of information do we need to collect? So setting the standards, defining the indicators, to actually collecting the data, and you're probably familiar with this work of us reaching to all the national actors, asking them to complete our surveys, the long questionnaire, the short questionnaire, on household indicators, on the administrative indicators. So we collect data from you, we process it, and we ensure that the data is accurate as possible, and as comparable as possible. And obviously, this data needs to be shared, needs to be used, and for that we need obviously to make it available. So we have different tools to share the data that we collect from you. We also help countries build their capacity in collecting the data. We also provide some technical assistance. We also conduct research to put data in perspective, make sense of the data, derive recommendations based on our data. And we also work with a lot of stakeholders, other UN agencies, private sector organizations, to develop new indicators, identify new sources of data, do research, exchange data, etc. So this is kind of our main activities in a nutshell. And I wanted to introduce you to some of our latest work across this data lifecycle. So starting with these targets for universal and meaningful connectivity. So going back to this concept of universal and meaningful connectivity, 2 years ago, we led a working group, multi-stakeholder working group, in the context of the UN Secretary General's digital roadmap. And we were tasked by the Secretary General to come up with a set of targets for connectivity. So that was in 2021. And based on this work, we developed these targets, about 20 targets that set kind of objectives for 2030 around connectivity. And we launched these targets in 2022 in collaboration with the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Technology. So it's very much a joint effort. And so we launched this target with the hope to galvanize efforts around achieving meaningful connectivity for everyone, to take stock of progress made so far, how much needs to be done, and also to identify the data gaps, because we realized that, again, when it comes to measuring the meaningful aspect of connectivity, there are a lot of data gaps. So by setting targets and seeing which target cannot be measured for which countries, we can highlight those data gaps and encourage countries to collect that data. So following that groundwork, we were fortunate enough to secure some funding from the European Union to launch a big project, which is worth 3 million euros and which will last for at least 3 years. We launched it in May of this year. And this project has 4 objectives. I mean, the overall project is to measure and promote universal and meaningful connectivity. And we have 4 specific objectives. First is to increase awareness of universal and meaningful connectivity as a policy imperative. Second is to increase the awareness, to improve the measurements and dissemination of UMC data. Thirdly is to enhance statistical capacity of national actors to measure universal and meaningful connectivity. And lastly, we want to identify policies, better policies for achieving universal and meaningful connectivity. So it's an ambitious project that will help ITU in its work around ICT statistics. And in the context of this project, we released a dashboard, which is called the Dashboard for Universal and Meaningful Connectivity. And it basically tracks progress of countries towards the universal and meaningful targets that we launched last year. So I will quickly show you this dashboard like a demo. So for that, I will quickly share my screen, and in one minute, just looking at the window. There you go. Hopefully you can see my screen. So this is the dashboard that you can access via the link that I was showing on the screen. I will put it in the chat. It's itu.int/UMC dashboard. But you can also access it via the data hub. So basically, the UMC dashboard is fully integrated in the ITU Data Hub, which is the ITU's data dissemination platform. So it looks very much the same if you know the data hub. And here, the landing page for this data dashboard is a country overview or an overview of a country's performance on the various targets for universal meaningful connectivity. And here you see the results for Switzerland, because this is where I am based, and it detects the IP address, so automatically loads the performance for Switzerland, but you can obviously select any country. And here you have again whether how Switzerland is doing on the various targets. So each shape is a target, and you can see whether there is no data, whether the performance is limited, satisfactory, advanced, or whether the target has been met. And below that, you can see a more tabular view of the performance, where you see for each of the targets actually the progress score. So we converted all the numbers into a scale from 0 to 100, where 100 is this ideal state indicating that the target has been met. So this is kind of the country page. You can also select comparison to see how two countries compare to each other. Then you can click on a target, a specific target, to see how the country that you selected has been doing over the years. And you see, for example, the rise of the increase in internet penetration in Switzerland over the years, to the point where the target has eventually been met. Below, you can see how the world is doing on these targets. So countries for which there is no data, countries where the situation is limited, where it's satisfactory, where the situation is advanced, and finally those countries that have met the targets of internet use. So these are the two main screens of this dashboard. I'll stop here, but I encourage you to have a look also at the data hub, which is our data dissemination platform, where we introduce a number of new features this year, including a data query, where you can select all the indicators in our database, select the economies, and download the data and navigate the data. I stop here. Back to you, Vivek. Thank you for your attention, and happy to take questions later.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm going to present to you the use of mobile phone big data for measuring digital transformation. So this is one area of work that we are focusing in our division as one of the new data sources that we are looking at. So in 2016 to 2020, we had conducted a number of pilots on examining the use of mobile phone big data for information society measurements. So this is to sort of complement or supplement existing data sources that we have. We will present those two data sources to you this afternoon, one on households-based information and one on administrative data. So this presentation is specifically on the use of big data for information society indicators. So we know that big data is really revolutionizing the world of statistics. This has been a focus of discussion in the international statistical community because it can address issues related to more timely, more granular, and less costly available data for the national statistical offices. In 2016, as I mentioned, the ITU has started its work on examining the use of mobile phone big data for information society measurements, as well as in developing methods that could help explore this new data source. We also collaborate with different stakeholders, but what is most important is the collaboration in national context. In these pilots, we found out that it's important to work with the ministries in the country, with the regulator, with data protection agency, with operators, of course, with the National Statistics Office, and those other agencies that are interested in using mobile phone big data. However, there are a lack of data access or some issues that relates to data access. There's still lack of capacity or data scientists that could work on this data. And the lack of IT infrastructure, it remains an issue in many of the developing countries. So what is mobile phone big data? So this mobile phone big data is defined as any type of mobile network event that are stored by mobile network operators that includes a subscriber identifier, time attribute, and location. An example is the call data records, which are routinely stored by mobile network operators for billing purposes, as well as passive signaling data. This is more frequent than CDR data, but not necessarily stored by MNOs routinely, as well as active signaling data. These are mobile data that are stored or not by operators, and subscribers can also opt out from being covered by this type of data. So who are the national stakeholders? I mentioned already that in implementing a mobile phone project, it's important that all the stakeholders in the country are involved, including the National Statistics Office, the regulator, the operators, and the different ministries. It's important to engage all of them in the beginning, mainly to share experiences and methodologies, but also to avoid duplication of resources and efforts, and to efficiently use the available resources. This will also ensure that targeted pilots are implemented successfully. One of the important area of work that ITU is also engaged in is the UN Committee of Experts on Big Data and Data Science for Official Statistics. This is a UN-wide initiative that puts together all agencies that are working on different areas of statistics that relates to different big data sources. Mobile phone big data source is one of them, but there's also scanner data, Earth observation data, access to privately held data, big data for SDGs, training and capacity building areas of work. And they are organized in different task teams. There's also regional hubs where all this information on the work of the task team are disseminated. They are available in Brazil, China, Rwanda, and UAE. And all the countries of the world are encouraged to work with these regional hubs. So one of the task teams is on mobile phone big data, and this is the ITU leading the work. The members are the different countries who are interested in these areas of work, but also different international agencies. I'm happy to mention that Georgia from this region is actively involved in the work of this task team. And this is the Statistics Office of Georgia that is contributing actively to the work of this task team. In particular, the mobile phone big data can be used in different areas of statistics. One of them is on the dynamic population mapping. And so mobile phone big data could be used to map the different population, including the resident population and daytime population. And it could be used to serve as sampling frames for surveys and also for mapping censuses. Another area of work, and I would also want to mention here that methodologies are available for the dynamic population mapping. The link is available in the screen in this presentation. Another area of work is on tourism, and this is one of the areas that is mostly tested in national statistical offices because they provide information on the mobilities of people without conducting the survey. And so, for example, Indonesia has been implementing this since 2016. And like the population dynamic mapping, there's also methodological materials that could be used for this purpose. Another area of work is on migration statistics. And this is an area of work that was actually led by the Statistics Office in Georgia. And here, what they produce is a guide on using migration mobile phone data for migration statistics. And what's important to point here is the timeliness for this type of information is served by using mobile phone big data. So again, a methodological guide is available in the link here. Another important use is on displacement and disaster statistics. So when disaster strikes, it's important that timely information is available. This is an example in 2021 in Haiti during the earthquake where people are displaced, and the only available timely information is coming from mobile phone big data. So again, mobile phone big data methodological guide on displacement and disaster statistics is available in the link provided below. Another area of work, and this is something that is ongoing, is to find out how mobile phone big data can be used for transport statistics. And the methodological guide for this area of work will be available soon. An important area, and this is the area where we are coming from, is on information society indicators. So in ITU, we are leading this work, and this is where we tested in a number of countries. The most recent ones were tested in Indonesia and in Brazil. And here what we found out is that the use of mobile phone big data could complement or supplement survey-based information. So if you don't do household surveys to collect information society indicators, mobile phone big data can be used to complement in between survey years information or provide information when no survey is available at all. And here we also provide a methodological guide that can be used by countries when they need to explore this new data source. And in the guide, what we provide is information on what are important reference data that could be used when analyzing this data, how the data could be processed, and how the information could be calculated for the SDG indicators, for example, on internet use and mobile population coverage, as well as how quality of the indicators and the input data could be ensured. We also provide information online through a training that is available in the ITU Academy. So you will be able to explore the information that I mentioned to you through an online training course, which is self-paced. You can check it on your availability and see the content of this mobile phone awareness course. And so in terms of way forward, we have generated some or developed some Python codes that can be used by national statistical offices who may want to develop this new area of work. And we encourage you to take part in trainings and develop and using the training materials and methodological guides that we have developed through the task teams. And finally, in terms of the conclusion, there's still several challenges that is there. And we hope that these challenges could be mitigated by having everybody to work with inside the country, as well as to take advantage of international work that is ongoing and methodologies and experts that are available in this area. So thank you very much for your attention, and we will be available to answer you for any question that you may have. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I will just share my screen. Can you see the screen, correct? Perfect. Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I'm a data scientist, also working together with Esperanza and Thierry in the data analytics division. Now, before I move to the next slide, I would like to make a few comments, just introducing this topic. So the amount of data generated from our online activities and the connected devices is enormous. But most of these data sources are private, and for many reasons, this data is not accessible to the public. But in the recent years, there have been closer collaboration between the public and the private sectors, and many private companies have begun to open up and share some of these data. And this was particularly evident during the COVID-19 pandemic and the use of mobile phone data to monitor the effectiveness of some of the mobility restrictions, for example. But in addition, many multinational companies, including, for example, Microsoft and Meta, the parent company of Facebook, have also set up specific departments that are looking at how their own data can be used for public good. Now, in addition, there's also a growing ecosystem of open data sets, for example, from satellite imagery to high-resolution population maps, which are prepared and also published by, for example, academia. So at ITU, we also have a second work stream exploring how big data from some of these new sources can help improve measuring connectivity, and especially also providing more granular estimates of internet use at the sub-national level. Now, moving on to one of the key SDG indicators is how many people around the world use the internet. Now, this indicator is obviously very important. It also measures the level of connectivity and the potential market for the digital economy. As we hear also more later in the session on ICT household data, data on internet use comes from ICT household services, or surveys, sorry, conducted by national statistics offices from around the world. But as we can see in this map, not all countries collect this data on an annual basis. You see that there are some large geographical gaps, especially in Africa, where limited data exists. Now, in addition, the data also collected by ITU is at the national level only, and only looking at the national level may hide some discrepancies within countries. For example, the often large differences in connectivity between urban and rural areas. So the availability, or the available data on access and use of the internet we use come mainly from two sources. We have the censuses, which generally only collected once a decade and do not necessarily include many ICT indicators, but can be very, very rich at the local level. So as such, they can be very useful for this particular project of looking at internet use and access at the sub-national level. We also have ICT household surveys, which are conducted more frequently, that contain more ICT indicators, but which only sample part of the country and have inherently then greater levels of uncertainty when trying to estimate connectivity at the local level. So can big data somehow help fill some of these gaps? Well, to do this, we're looking at different big data sources, but we do have some criteria. Now, the first is that these data sources need to be open and accessible to us. And secondly, since we have a global mandate, we're also looking at some of these data sources that do have a global coverage or as near global coverage as possible. We also focus on data sources which can be updated regularly. And lastly, since we're looking at within countries, the data source should also have high geographic resolution, meaning be quite detailed at very small geographic areas. So what are the big data that we're using for this project? Well, we're constantly looking into new data sources, but I'll present three different kinds. The first one is the satellite data. And many of the data sets here are publicly available through the Google Earth engine at a very high geographic resolution. And this allows us to get a better understanding of the landscape of each area that we're looking at. Is it an urban area? Is it a forest area? Is it cropland, farms, and so on? Now, one additional benefit of using satellite data is also that most of these data sets are global. So we can collect the same data, measured in the same way for practically every country in the world. We also look at data sets that are mapping the ICT infrastructure. One of these sources is the national ICT backbone infrastructure. And using this data, for example, we can calculate some new indicators for each of these geographic area we're looking at. For example, the distance to the closest fiber optic node. But we're also integrating data on the location and the theoretical coverage of cell towers. But since actual data on the location of cell towers is sometimes quite hard to get, you have to get it directly from mobile operators in many countries. We also use OpenCellID, which is an open database that includes crowdsourced information that is collected from millions of users around the world through their mobile applications. Now, lastly, technical infrastructure and the geography is not necessarily enough to try to measure internet use at very low geographic areas. We must also try to understand the people side and who live in this area, who connects and who does not connect to the internet. And this is one of the way the main challenge that is faced, because there could be quite large differences in areas that look rather similar and with a similar access to the infrastructure. But some good sources include, for example, very granular estimates of population down to each square kilometer. And these are made available, for example, by WorldPop, which is a research program at the University of Southampton in the United Kingdom. And these estimates can also be broken down by gender or age and can give a better sense of the demographics of the different areas. But this is also the area where the private sector data can really add value, because many companies do collect, for example, speed tests from users, either directly through speed test apps. For example, Ookla is one of those examples, or indirectly to simply test the connection before the program downloads large files. So for example, Microsoft is another one here. Now, in addition as well, some companies do even more sophisticated analysis. So for example, I mentioned before Meta, and they recently calculated a relative wealth index, which use information from household surveys together with their own Facebook data and estimate the relative standard of living within countries for each 3 by 3 square kilometer in more than 100 countries. So the approach that we take is to develop machine learning models which uses these big data sources as input variables and then model internet use at the highest geographic resolution possible. This could be, for example, enumeration area or statistical areas or postal codes in some countries. So to train the model, we put all this big data together for each of the geographic area that we're looking at. And as ground truth, we're using the available data from either the latest census or the latest ICT household survey. And the right side here, the map show, for example, an output of what we're aiming towards. This is the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And each pixel here, each square, is 3 by 3 kilometers. And the color indicates the estimated proportion of individuals using the internet in each of these areas. The more yellow it is, the more people use the internet, greater share. And the darker it is, the fewer, lower share is using the internet. Then what we do is that we aggregate and validate the results at the regional and national level. And we also try to test models in different countries. Now, this is just to show that by using these small independent areas for the modeling, we can provide not only estimates on the level of connectivity in local communities, but we also aim to then also aggregate and validate the data at the municipality or regional or even national levels. And then this way, it can also then help being sort of a bottom-up approach in filling some of these larger gaps in the world map that I showed earlier. Now, as next steps, we'll continue to explore new data sources and improve these models. We're also looking for more partners to expand this work. On the private sector side, I mentioned, for example, Microsoft. We're currently working with Microsoft to try to see if we can incorporate some of their data and developing models. For the moment, we're looking at, for example, using census data in Mexico. But we're also actively seeking more partners from national statistics offices who have recently done a census or an ICT household survey and are willing to contribute some of their data as the ground truth data on the household data to strengthen these models. And the more household data that we have, the better we can then assess the importance of these big data sources and achieving better accuracy in the models. So I'm opening, in case you are interested, then please reach out to us in case you're willing to contribute to this project. Lastly, we also want to explore and see how models using data from many countries can also improve their overall accuracy and not just using data from one country. And once we reach a level of confidence, we also want to share these estimates and start looking at how we can make these estimates available. So I'll stop there and thank you, and happy to answer any questions that you might have later.
А, Да, добрый день. Спасибо большое за предоставленное слово. В первую очередь хочется сказать, что при работе с национальной статистикой в области ИКТ Республика Беларусь ориентируется на международную статистику, а также цели устойчивого развития. Значит, сбор первичных статистических данных от респондентов у нас осуществляется посредством единой информационной системы государственной статистики Республики Беларусь. У нас фигурируют два основных отчета. Первый отчет – это отчет о техническом состоянии средств электросвязи. Это такой крупный отчет, он у нас собирается один раз в год ввиду достаточно большого охвата количества респондентов, юридических лиц и юридических лиц, которые осуществляют деятельность в области телекоммуникаций. По последнему отчетному периоду у нас было 175 респондентов. Соответственно, данный отчет, как я уже сказал, ежегодный. Респонденты предоставляют информацию до 1 февраля, соответственно, мы прорабатываем, 1 апреля подаем сводную информацию в наш Национальный статистический комитет. Данная форма имеет два основных раздела. Это приемные станции спутниковой связи, системы кабельного телевидения и сеть эфирного цифрового телевизионного вещания, а также раздел сети передачи данных. Значит, в этом разделе у нас фигурируют основные показатели, которые подаем в различные международные статистические сборники, также в национальные статистические сборники и различные бюллетени. Это информация о стационарном широкополосном доступе, о количестве абонентов, также о беспроводном широкополосном доступе и объему данных, которые были потреблены абонентами и пользователями в зависимости от типа доступа. Также здесь у нас собирается информация по количеству уникальных абонентов и пользователей стационарного широкополосного доступа в сеть интернет в разбивке по технологиям и скоростям передачи данных, что находит свое отражение при формировании показателя по цели устойчивого развития. Вторая наша форма – это отчет о развитии сотовой подвижной электросвязи. Ввиду небольшого пула респондентов, у нас всего лишь 5 операторов имеют лицензию на предоставление услуг сотовой подвижной электросвязи. Мы имеем возможность собирать данные чуть чаще, они у нас собираются ежеквартально. Здесь у нас также имеется два основных раздела. Первый раздел – это сеть сотовой подвижной электросвязи, по которой мы можем собирать статистику по количеству абонентов сотовой подвижной электросвязи, по количеству базовых станций в разбивке по технологиям, по количеству приема-передатчиков, а также количество сотовой подвижной электросвязи, которые используются для передачи данных в сеть интернет, в том числе с разделением по технологии LTE. Также здесь у нас собирается информация по охвату услугами сотовой подвижной электросвязи, которую мы подаем для обеспечения должного информирования, для обеспечения показателя 9-й цели устойчивого развития по охвату территории и населения Республики Беларусь услугами сотовой подвижной электросвязи, соответственно, в разбивке по технологиям. Также у нас здесь имеется раздел по пропуску трафика, где собирается информация по исходящему трафику, входящему трафику, внутрисетевому, межсетевому, международному трафику в тысячах минут, ММС, СМС, а также по объему трафика данных. Значит, статистика из данных форм, я уже сказал, подается в различные международные опросники, также используется для предоставления в различные национальные статистические сборники и бюллетени. Сбор и анализ этих данных позволяет нам, как органу-регулятору, провести оценку эффективности принятия тех или иных регуляторных решений, чтобы иметь возможность обеспечить предоставление качественных услуг электросвязи и сотовой подвижной электросвязи для государства, бизнеса и граждан республики. Вместе с тем, в связи с тем, что сейчас проходит работа по пересмотру методологии формирования индекса ИКТ Международным союзом электросвязи, наши данные формы, про которые я только что рассказал, также будут подвергнуты глобальному пересмотру. У меня на этом все. Надеюсь, уложился. Спасибо.
Dear e-colleague, please, can we have a picture? Would be great.
Hello. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I lost the audio, but I assume you're waiting for my slides. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'm going to present to you ICT household indicators, so its data collection and use. So we already heard this morning some of the data that are coming from this data source. This is one of the data collection of ITU, and we call this our traditional data source. So ICT household indicators are mainly data that are coming from national statistical offices. I will share with you what are the data collection schedules and how the data are being used, and some conclusions to help the way forward for this important data source. So this afternoon or earlier this afternoon, the presentation from Thierry covered some of the broad areas in terms of the work of our division, and collecting and analyzing this data is one of the key activities that we do. Of course, we cannot collect any data without defining the indicators, and that's really the start of the work that we do with regards to the data collection. We need to define the indicators, and this we do through our EGT and EGH. So the expert group on ICT household indicators is the group that defines the data that are collected from surveys by the national statistical offices. The validation is an important area of work because we need to make sure that the data are according to the definitions as well as it is comparable at the international level. We also harmonize them and aggregate them at the regional and global level and analyze them before we disseminate in different forms, including the data hub that we saw this morning, as well as other analyses or other reports where these data are featured. This includes, of course, some of the work that are also done by other international agencies that use our data. So the two main data sources that we have is on supply side data, which will be presented to you later on by my colleague. And I'm going to focus on the right-hand side, which we call the demand side data, collected using ICT surveys, traditionally called household surveys done by national statistical offices. So this data collection of ours, we send them through annual questionnaires, which are directed to the national statistical offices in every country. And this demand side data, as I mentioned, are typically collected using household ICT surveys done by the national statistical offices, who are the experts to ensure the representativeness of the sample that are used to collect this type of data. The surveys are usually done not too frequent. In most cases, it's every 2 years. Some countries, even from this region, conduct this survey yearly, so there's a good coverage with regards to the survey data collection. However, there's some limitation because this collection can be costly and time-consuming. So in some countries, this is not even done regularly, or baseline information is not collected even. And what's the main use? Of course, this is to see what are the available services with regards to ICT and the services, how they are used, what are the skills, like what we heard earlier in some of the presentations from the countries, as well as the barriers why households or individuals do not have access or do not use this type of services or the devices. So in terms of the background, the ITU started collecting this information in 2003. And in 2005, we started our annual data collection through our short questionnaire, which we collect usually around March or September of every year, but only focusing on key indicators, and a longer questionnaire that we usually send in September of every year, which compiles information which are more detailed, showing the different disaggregations for the different indicators that we collect. And the data are compiled and disseminated through the ITU World Telecom Indicators Database, which many of you are familiar with, as well as in the recent ITU Data Hub that was demoed earlier this afternoon. So this data collection I highlighted here in red are the ones I mentioned earlier. The short questionnaire is usually collected in March or April every year, and data are published in July. And the household long questionnaire will be sent in middle September to the National Statistical Office, and the data will be published in the beginning of next year. There are countries, of course, that do not reply to our questionnaires, and later you will see that some of this information are crucial for different benchmarking purposes. And so what ITU does is to estimate those missing information for the key indicators such as internet use, to make sure we can aggregate the data at the international and global and regional level. So the short questionnaire I mentioned was sent in April, It was sent through a new platform, Qualtrics, where our country focal points received their login credentials and previous year data reflected in an online questionnaire, and they were able to complete and submit this information online. Experience so far is very promising with this new platform, and we hope that it will be also the same experience that will be countries will have in the long questionnaire. However, for the long questionnaire, this year we are sending it in September, middle of September. It will be similar to an Excel worksheet, but it will be also uploadable to the Qualtrics platform. So the login credentials will be again sent to the country focal points. And here in the link provided below, you will be able to see the sample questionnaires so that you are familiar with the type of information that will be collected in middle of September. So the questionnaire will be open for 1 month. And so I mentioned that the data collection is based on a solid methodology defined by the EGH. And so this methodology is contained in the manual for measuring ICT household access and use by individuals, which covers information with regards to the definition, the data collection techniques when implementing a household survey, how sampling is done, as well as the quality assurance when implementing the key indicators or the core list of indicators. It's also including a model questionnaire that National Statistics Office can use when collecting the data using household surveys. So this material is available in 6 languages, and Russian is one of those languages. So you'll see the link there, and this manual is available for everybody to use and download. So the expert group on household indicators is an active group, which is mainly working online throughout the year. There are several topics that are open for discussion during the year. And every year, September, so this year, September 18 to 20, there will be a discussion of this group. And the idea is to present the results of the online discussions that took place during 2023. So the topics that will be discussed includes measurement of ICT skills, the OTT services, as well as e-waste. So these are some of the topics that were discussed during 2023. So if you are not yet a member of this group, I invite you to participate actively through the online discussions and also attending the physical meetings. It will be in Geneva. So this is the logo to the meeting, 18 to 21 September. It will be physical and also online. And if you have not registered, please do so and participate in the physical and the hybrid meeting. At the same time, the manual is available and made as a source material in delivering our training courses. We used to deliver this in physical courses, mainly a 1-week course, which we did in the past in every region. But since COVID, we started delivering it through an online course through the ITU Academy. And this course can be done as a self-paced. It's free during 3 to 4 days duration. So you can do it anytime you have and covers the different modules, 5 modules, from the data collection to the different sources, data processing, and to the dissemination of this data. So if you have not seen this course, I invite you to also participate. There will be badges that are delivered in completion of each of the modules, and a collection of these 5 badges will entitle you to a training certificate. So this is a recognized training in the ITU Academy. So in terms of the data availability for ICT household data, we heard earlier the presentation from Irina detailing the available data on households, but this table just provides a snapshot of the available data submissions to us from this region. So the availability is good, but for 2022, we hope that some countries will be able to submit the data in the data collection in September. So the link and the credentials will be sent to you very soon, and I hope this table will be as complete as possible in the years to come. So how are data used? This afternoon, it was demoed, the data hub. And so one of the most important indicators, as I mentioned, is the individuals using the internet. You are invited to explore the other breakdowns of household indicators available in the data hub. These are all for free and available for all the data that we collected related to this type of statistics. It was also presented the universal and meaningful connectivity indicators. 6 of them highlighted in red are coming from the ICT household data collection. And so it's important that these data are submitted to ITU so that appropriate benchmarking can be done with regards to these indicators. The SDGs, it was also mentioned to you, 5 of these indicators are coming from ITU, and 3 of the indicators, including ICT skills, mobile ownership, and internet users, are coming from the ICT data, household data collection. This is also used by the Broadband Commission in their targets related to connecting the other half of the population in the Connect 2030 strategic goal of the ITU. And so these indicators are very important to collect and submit to the ITU. These are 3 indicators that are highlighted in red. So just some highlights on an example of how the data are used. This is a feature in our ITU Facts and Figures 2022, where we highlighted that the global figure in terms of people online in 2022 is still at 5.3 billion. And so there remains a 2.7 billion offline population that needs to be connected. This is one of the most quoted ITU data that we have. And so it's important that the data, the indicators that are collected from countries are correct and as precise as possible that feeds into this global figure. This is also broken down by region. So for example, in the CIS, 84% of individuals are using the internet in 2022. So this can be useful in benchmarking regional differences as well as progress with regards to this particular indicator. Gender gap is also something that could be derived from ICT household data that we collect. So for example, here you will see that the gender gap in the CIS is not as wide as in the other region, but there still remains a considerable gap in other regions as well as in the world. 3/4 of the youth age 15 to 24 years use the internet, and this is a lot higher as compared to the rest of the population globally. In the CIS, of course, this is the youth has around 91% compared to 83% of the rest of the population. So this is again one type of analysis that could be done if you have household level data. The urban-rural divide is another information that could be extracted from this type of information, as well as in terms of the mobile ownership. So the CIS compared to the world is doing really well at 91% in terms of mobile ownership. And in other regions, the CIS is really catching up with regards to the amount of mobile phone ownership. So the situation is good in the region, and we will not be able to highlight that if we don't have the necessary information. And so therefore, to conclude, it's important to have this ICT data collection that are done by the National Statistical Offices, and it's important that the ITU manual on household data collection is used for this purpose. It's important that you submit the data, and for that, the contacts of the people who are working on this needs to be as up to date as possible, because we provide them their own online credentials that could be used to complete the questionnaire. So if somebody from your organization is completing the questionnaire and you know the person left, you have to let us know so that we will be able to complete or update the information. Please join the EGH group and attend the meeting and contribute to the discussions, either online or physically, so that whatever is relevant for this region is heard and could be taken into consideration when developing methodologies and considerations in the data collection of this group. So these are the different products that I mentioned earlier. You will be able to see that from our website. And I invite you to visit and explore the other materials that we have on the ICT Statistics website. These are my information. The slides has a lot more information with regards to some reference materials that could be used related to the definition of the indicators. So I invite you to consult them after this meeting. And I'm available to reply to your question immediately. Thank you very much, and over to you. Thank you. So for ICT households indicators, the name of the group is EGH, Expert Group on Household Indicators. I added a link in the slide, which I will also paste in the chat later on. And in that link, just click it and make a registration, providing your name, your title, and your affiliation, and we will approve that. And once your registration is approved, you will be able to see the different items that are being discussed in the online forum. At the same time, so I mentioned that the group will meet physically and also online. You will be able to join online in September 18 to 21. And so with that registration that I will put in the link, you will be able to register in thank you, Danielle. I think he put the link in the chat. So there's the meeting link, the physical meeting. You have to also register to that to be able to participate in the physical meeting or hybrid meeting. And the registration for both this the meeting and the EGH is free. I encourage everyone to join and take part in the discussions. Over to you. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. Let me share my screen just a second, please. Thank you. Okay, can you confirm you can see my slides, please? Okay, thank you very much. I will complement the picture provided by Esperanza by talking about the other side, by the administrative ICT indicators that were collected by the ITU. What are the methodologies we apply to ensure a global comparison? How are the statistics produced and how are the statistics used? What do they mean? This will be the focus of my presentation, talking about some of the SDG indicators, infrastructure, and affordability indicators we collect. So as you see, this is the supply side of the ITU statistics, which comes from administrative data that originates from telecom operators. We collect it from regulators and ministries. And we also collect ICT service price data, which originates again from regulators and ministries, but also from telecom operators' website. It is important to be aware of the differences when it comes to ICT statistics, because the supply side is somewhat different from what Esperanza was talking about in the previous presentation about demand side statistics. So the type of data that originate from administrative records of mobile cellular network operators or internet service providers, think of subscriptions, coverage, traffic from call data records, or network monitoring parameters, are data that operators collect and generate essentially in real time, but they do report this periodically to ICT ministries or regulatory authorities on a quarterly or annual basis. This is the essence of the data that is reported to ITU. The availability of the data is really dependent on the capacity of both operators and regulators to capture and to report the data, but also there may be legal restrictions or licensing requirements which hamper or accelerate data reporting. The main use of supply side statistics is statistics on infrastructure, access, and use, and provides a timely picture of the ICT landscape. Now, if you would like to see how the international standards are set from the perspective of administrative data or supply side statistics, it's useful to keep in mind that administrative data covers harmonized indicators for fixed and mobile networks, for the internet, for bundles, traffic, for employment, revenue, and investment figures, as well as broadcasting and quality of service figures. ICT service prices, on the other hand, are measured with the help of ICT price baskets, which help make retail prices for mobile cellular and fixed broadband services globally comparable. I will talk about these shortly. But before that, what are the instruments and mechanisms to ensure that data meets quality standards, and how are these quality standards set? The ITU expert group on telecom ICT indicators, the EGTI, is similar to the expert group on household indicators. This develops and reviews on a regular basis the methodologies for the indicators that are collected in the ITU questionnaires. The upcoming meeting is happening, as you can see in the link, or remember from Esperanza's presentation, very shortly, between the 18th and 21st of September, and you are very welcome to register and join the meeting. The Bible, or the main reference document for the collection of administrative data on telecom and ICT, is the ITU Handbook, which was released most recently in 2020 and is available free of charge in all the 6 UN languages, including Russian. This is the basis for data collection and data validation that both our data producers and ITU statistics apply. It is important to keep in mind that ITU runs, similarly to household questionnaires, also questionnaires on world telecom ICT indicators. That is the source for administrative data. ITU questionnaires refer to the situation in the previous year, throughout the year, or on the 31st of December. There is some lag time between the production and processing of data, which is why, for example, 2023 July statistics, which you may have seen, refer to 2022. Price statistics, on the other hand, are collected. The World Telecom ICT indicators data collection comes in a short and a long questionnaire form, happening in spring and autumn. And while the first one covers around a dozen indicators, the long questionnaire looks at more details, around 80 indicators on an annual basis. Price questionnaire is carried out around the middle of the year, every year. This year it was June 2023, and we will look at the data received and go through a long validation process before it is released. The availability of statistics from the supply side is rather good if we look at the CIS region. And the 2 main exceptions are Tajikistan and recently Kyrgyzstan lacks up-to-date statistics. Turkmenistan is partially covered, but you do see, or you have seen, a comprehensive picture on an indicator by indicator level in Irina's presentation earlier today. We hope that the picture will be even more complete soon. How do we make sense of the data and how do we make use of it? Some of the ICT's supply-side statistics feed into high-level monitoring purposes. One of the most important ones is the Sustainable Development Goals and the SDG indicator framework, where out of the 5 indicators that are under the responsibility of ITU, 2 come from the supply side. And these are the population covered by a mobile network, broken down by technology, and the fixed internet broadband subscriptions per 100 inhabitants, broken down by speed. But there are other targets, such as the UN Broadband Commission's affordability and other targets, or the Connect 2030 Agenda strategic goals, or what Thierry and Esperanza was already talking about, the universal meaningful connectivity targets, all have elements from supply-side statistics. The population covered by mobile network is the indicator used for SDG 9C1 target, and it covers the proportion of the population that lives within range of a mobile cellular network signal. This is defined importantly in a way that it doesn't matter whether a population living within the coverage is subscriber or not. So it's not a measure of penetration, but a measure of potential to use connectivity or potential to connect. Data for this indicator is obtained from mobile network operators. And we look at the different generations for the main purpose of understanding the quality of the connection. 3G, so the third generation or more advanced technology, allows mobile broadband connection. The CIS region is rather well covered in this respect. So 97% of the population lives within range of a 4G signal, which is higher than the global average. But as you can see in the graph, there is a high variation across the region, and it is notable that the urban-rural divide matters. The next frontier is, of course, the 5G networks. And in this respect, in the CIS, based on statistics, we only see the network in Uzbekistan, where 12% of the population was covered in 2022. It is possible that other countries have deployed 5G networks, but statistics have not yet been reported to the ITU. So we encourage you to help us understand how the deployment is happening. Another important statistics for SDG monitoring is fixed broadband subscriptions. The data source for this statistics is internet service providers. So this statistics measures the advertised speed of subscriptions. And it's important that regulators ensure that the advertised speed matches the actual speed you receive on the ground as a user. Here, we notice that there are data gaps. And we also notice that there is a high variation in terms of fixed broadband penetration within the CIS region, even if, as you see, on a global scale, the region is outperforming the world average. What is important is that here, it's interesting to see how fast the connections are. And what you can see in the lower graph is that most of the subscriptions in some countries like Azerbaijan or Turkmenistan are in the slower scale, while elsewhere in the region, such as Russia, Uzbekistan, Armenia, the faster speeds are more widely available. The latest global trends show that there's an increase in the segmentation. So in the 100 megabit and even gigabit connectivity levels, that is where most dynamics are happening. And it is important for cloud computing that users have access to fast connections. It is interesting to monitor these statistics because you can see in parallel both the network deployment as well as technology upgrades, both of them happening at the same time. Out of the universal and meaningful connectivity targets, you can see three of the statistics that are related to administrative data, so supply side statistics. The fixed broadband, which we have looked at, and here the focus is, of course, on the faster speeds, because that is the source of meaningful connectivity, as well as affordability. I will talk about that in a second. Just to make sure that you get a complete picture of the connectivity infrastructure, it's probably useful to keep in mind that there is, of course, the last mile connectivity, which is well covered by indicators collected by the ITU's administrative data sources and the international connectivity. But there's also a middle mile, which is increasingly important and which is still awaiting for globally harmonized statistics to be developed. International connectivity, what I've been talking about is international bandwidth usage, which is an interesting indicator measuring the capacity of international fiber and radio linkages. And this is the backbone of the data economy. So the global data flows are all relying on international bandwidth. It is a challenging indicator to collect because we do need to distinguish the actually used capacity from the equipped or lit capacity or the potential capacity of the linkages, which is often not fully transparently provided by the cable operators. But if we can have a good understanding of these statistics, we can map and monitor how the global data flows are growing. And we do see rapid increase over the past years, especially in light of the COVID pandemic. But still, there are uneven distributions and there are hub effects which distort the picture a bit. Let me talk about affordability statistics a bit, because this is one of the more complicated, but nevertheless relevant measures to understand barriers to connectivity. Why I mean barriers is because on the graph here, you can see that where the higher the share of population that pay less than 2% of their income to access mobile or fixed broadband, the higher the share of internet users will be in the country. And so evidently, affordability is an important barrier to connectivity. ITU has been monitoring ICT prices for a long time for many reasons, to follow market dynamics, understand competition in a country. Regulators do it to understand if the licensing requirements are met by operators, and understand all kinds of additional uses of affordability statistics, such as for digital entrepreneurship or monitoring policy targets. How does ITU make ICT prices internationally comparable? It's not easy because we are essentially often comparing apples and oranges, but the methodology which is applied helps bring that together. The focus is on a unit, which is a basket of ICT services. These are constituted by a given set of voice, SMS, or data traffic within a given set of time period, a month. Data is collected according to detailed rules, which are established by the EGTI expert group and reviewed from time to time to ensure that it reflects global usage patterns. And the 5 baskets were defined, which are currently in use, to meet and reflect the requirements in high and low income countries. Quality assurance is provided by meticulous data collection, not just by country focal points, but also desk research and a long validation process. And prices are reported in different measures to ensure that it meets or suits user needs. The 5 baskets, which are currently in the focus of data collection, are 4 mobile cellular baskets. 1 is a low usage basket, which doesn't include data. It's as easy as it gets. So it just contains 70 minutes of voice and 20 SMS, while the data and voice low consumption and high consumption basket already are mobile broadband baskets with data usage. And then there is the data on the mobile broadband, and finally the fixed broadband basket with 5 GB monthly data allowance, but typically already exceeded and typically unlimited data allowance in most countries. Prices are also measured in 3 different measures or units. In US dollars, which is a simple and timely comparison, but it uses exchange rates, which may be artificially distorted. So one way to correct for that is to adjust prices for differences in purchasing power. This is why we also publish statistics in PPPs. And to measure affordability, so how much effort one needs to make out of the monthly average income, is expressing prices as a percentage of monthly gross national income per capita. Looking at the region, it is quite good, this situation. Prices in the CIS region are mostly affordable. That means in the blue range, which are below the 2% of GNI per capita target set by the UN Broadband Commission. Some exceptions are Turkmenistan, but it is just above the line. Tajikistan is fairly higher. This is where hopefully we see efforts to bring the prices down. On the contrary, fixed broadband prices are fairly higher globally, but also in the region. Armenia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan are less affordable for especially the lower income segments of the population, while Russia, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan offer affordable fixed broadband prices as well. If you look at the global trends of ICT price trends, it's interesting to notice that there's an overall decline in the trend, but there was a change in the course due to the COVID pandemic, mostly because of the drop of the income, which was an effect of the financial and economic crisis triggered by the pandemic. Now, what I mentioned was just a few highlights from the supply side statistics or the administrative data that is collected by the ITU. And of course, time limitations keep me from talking longer about other aspects of internet traffic, bundle services, employment, revenues, quality of service statistics, and the rest. However, you are all very welcome to join at your own pace the ITU Academy course that is dedicated to measuring digital development and telecom ICT indicators. This is the supply side. Here there are 5 modules aligned with the handbook with an updated module on ICT price baskets released this year. And if you complete them, you will be able to earn both the badges and the certificate. And this is a good way to understand what is in the handbook, which would be a bit more dry. But the course is ensured to make it more interactive. So to conclude, up-to-date statistical evidence is key to closing the digital divide. I don't think I need to emphasize this point in this forum. But we are also very much aware of the efforts it takes to produce good quality statistics. We appreciate all the efforts, and we encourage further engagement to make sure that the data is comprehensive and up to date. And if some of the contacts are lost, we are again encouraging to keep the contacts up to date. Yes, please participate in the work of the expert group on telecom ICT indicators. Please share your experience and help us develop global standards. and make sure that we are up to date and reflect what's happening in around the world. And please feel encouraged to make use of the data, which is openly accessible through the ITU Data Hub. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out either now or in the future. Spasiba. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I understood only the second question because the translation was switched. Could you repeat, please? Thank you very much for the question. Affordability statistics are essentially universally available because where prices are not provided by the questionnaire respondents, our desk researchers complete the picture. So we do have statistics available on Kyrgyzstan as well. I will post a link in the chat where you can see the ICT price visualization app, which is the best source of accessing these statistics. So I can confirm it is available. Yes, thank you very much. And we really appreciate the opportunity to engage at this forum. We are open to receive the data. In the best opportunity will be the upcoming data collection round, which is starting mid-September. It will be the ITU long questionnaire. And if you can let us know who should be the addressees of the questionnaire that have not provided so far, we will ensure that you receive the link and then you can complete the questionnaire in which is about to be open. Again, I will also copy here the link to our data collection schedule. And thank you, Esperanza, for the price dashboard. Yeah. I'm sorry, could I ask the translators to keep to one channel because it keeps changing and I missed the translation. Yes, if you recognize that you do have the data which is missing for previous year, please reach out to us and send it over. In every questionnaire, we always cover the previous year and 2 earlier years. So there's always a chance to add anything that is missing from, in this case, 2020, 2021, and 2022 as well. But if you do have the data, you can send us an Excel table and that could cover the previous years. We will be happy to find a way to accommodate. But I mean, please bear in mind that we are capturing statistics and collecting data for around 200 economies worldwide. So in order to ensure the mechanism is working as flawlessly as possible, we really encourage every respondent to use the questionnaire. But yeah, thank you. We all share the same passion and interest to cover the gaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting us to present in this workshop. I'm going to share my screen now, so if you could please let me know if you see it. Can you see my presentation, or is it the wrong screen? Okay, so I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Sorry, I'll just fix that. Just a moment. Try this again. Just a moment. Okay, so I think you. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to speak relatively slowly to allow for interpretation to catch up. I will be talking about the digital economy indicators, which are the mandate of UNCTAD. You will notice as I start this presentation that we follow a very similar approach to ITU has for the household and infrastructure indicators. My presentation is going to first introduce you to the digital economy indicators, and then talk very shortly about why these indicators are useful, what are we using them for, and countries use them for. And finally, I will talk a little bit about training opportunities and technical assistance opportunities and other resources that we have at UNCTAD in this area. So in order to measure anything, as you know, we have to define it. Unlike other areas of statistics, the definition for statistical purposes of the digital economy is still very much in flow. There is a working definition currently that is focused on the producer side of the digital economy, on businesses. This working definition emphasizes the nature of the products, and that would be mainly ICT goods, information and communication technology goods, ICT services, digital content, and services that can be delivered digitally. And this could be services that can also be delivered physically, but have the option of being delivered digitally. It also emphasizes the nature of the production, whether it's digital or not, and whether the transaction of the trade is digitally ordered or digitally delivered. The working definition of the digital economy right now is represented in this figure that you see on the slide. It remains a proposed definition because there hasn't been an international agreement that says this is what we call digital economy, because the digital economy is an evolving concept. We also recognize that some parts of the digital economy are currently outside of the scope of statistics, of official statistics. So we recognize that there are aspects of the digital economy that exist, but we cannot measure. And what we can measure is then very specifically defined. And that is what we call the core and narrow approach to the digital economy, core and narrow definitions of the digital economy. And they focus on what we can quantify, the products and the trade. This working definition was endorsed by the G20 in 2020, by their Digital Economy Task Force, which I believe has recently changed its name. So you can find more information from the G20 DEWG, the Digital Economy Working Group. But in 2020, it was the task force, and they endorsed this approach, gradual approach, and tiered approach to the definition of the digital economy. So this definition of the digital economy is also addressed in our manual for the production of statistics. And this UNCTAD manual has been around for quite some time, but the most recent edition is, and the one that you should refer to if you want to find out more about the indicators on the digital economy, is from 2020. You will find this one online in the UNCTAD website. I will also share a link to it once I finish the presentation in the chat. The UNCTAD manual is available in several languages, and hopefully Russian will soon be available. The digital economy manual includes definitions on core indicators of the digital economy, the definitions on what constitutes ICT goods, and which are the indicators on trade in ICT goods, what constitutes ICT services, and what can be defined as ICT-enabled or digitally delivered services. Similarly, we have core indicators on the use of ICT by businesses and on the ICT sector, specifically on employment of the ICT sector as a proportion of the total business sector, and on the proportion of the ICT sector value added as part of GDP. And we also have two core indicators that deal with e-commerce, specifically whether businesses are placing orders online or receiving orders online through the internet. The manual gives guidance on how to compile these core indicators. There are currently 12 business indicators with subcategories and 4 ICT sector indicators. So the guidance in the manual includes data sources and methods, how to design an ICT survey or a module in a business survey that asks ICT questions. It provides guidance on model questionnaire or model questions, and also provides recommendations on the breakdown of these indicators, so that it shows that, for example, ICT used by business indicators can be compiled to enable countries to make a distinction between urban and rural use of ICT by businesses, distinctions according to enterprise size, and distinctions according to the economic activity. And that is according to the classification of economic activities, Issyk Rev 3.1 and Issyk Rev 4. The manual, lastly, also offers some guidance on how to present these indicators and disseminate the data. So, as I mentioned, we have 12 indicators on ICT used by businesses, which you can see listed here on the right-hand side of this slide. And also, there are 2 of those that are they're not about the business, but about the employees, the persons employed, and it's an indicator on persons employed routinely using computers and those routinely using the internet. There are also 2 proposed indicators on mobile use by businesses, but those are not considered core indicators. What is considered a core indicator is this short list that was established through the Partnership on Measuring ICT for Development, of which ITU is a member, and was endorsed quite some time ago by the countries through the UN Statistical Commission. Core indicators is means it just provides the baseline. Of course, countries are free to measure more and other indicators if they want to, but these core indicators mostly aim at having a base level of comparability between countries so that everyone is collecting the same indicator with the same understanding of the underlying definitions, and we can compare between countries. The indicators on use of ICT by businesses are mostly collected through business ICT surveys. They can be collected either through dedicated surveys on ICT use or by including questions on ICT use in existing business surveys. In developing countries, increasingly, this is the preferred approach because any survey, any business survey, has cost implications. So if it's possible to have even just some core or baseline indicators in existing business surveys, then the possibility of having these indicators available increases. An example of how the manual shows the core indicators and explains them is here. For example, we have indicator B3 on the proportion of businesses using the internet. In the manual, you will find the relevant concepts. You will find model questions that are suggested, how to include a question on this in a survey, recommended disaggregations and classifications, and also an explanation on why this indicator is important. This list of core indicators was the result of a consultation quite a few years ago, where national statistical offices and the international organizations in the partnership agreed that there is a policy importance for these indicators. Internet use is as important for businesses as it is for individuals. As you saw in the previous presentations by ITU, the indicator on internet users is very important, and it's used as it's one of those indicators that are used to track progress on the SDGs. Proportion of businesses using the internet is just as important in order to measure whether ICTs are truly being used to boost development in developing countries. So as I said, it's not, there are several implications for development of ICT. In this case of internet use, it's not only whether businesses are using internet or not, which is a yes or no question, but also how are they using it? What are they doing with it? And we have one of the indicators which asks what is the internet used for, and then subcategories for responses, response categories. And you can find out if an indicator, if a business is using the internet to access financial services, which is an indicator of financial inclusion. You can ask if a business is using the internet for training or recruitment. You can find out if a business is using the internet for transacting with government organizations or interacting with government organizations, which is also an indicator of e-government. Aside from the indicators on ICT use by businesses, which are collected through surveys, through business surveys by national statistical organizations, there are two indicators, actually four indicators in this list that UNCTAD is responsible for, which is about trade in the ICT sector, international trade. UNCTAD, as you can see, stands for UN Conference on Trade and Development. Our main concern is trade. and the impact on development. So we are taking a look at imports and exports of ICT goods and ICT services. However, these indicators are not collected through business surveys. They are collected, they are compiled from trade statistics that are already well established. There is a database called the UN Comtrade database, and we can extract the data related to the ICT sector. And these data are published online in the UNCTAD statistical portal, and I believe we have those data on the ICT, the trade in the ICT sector for all of the CIS states. However, I cannot say the same for the data on ICT use by businesses. This is another example on the ICT services indicators. Sorry, let me go back one. So we have the two core indicators on ICT goods are imports and exports of ICT goods, very straightforward. And then on ICT services, we have imports and exports of ICT services, but we have a second definition that is not strictly ICT services, it's ICT enabled services, which means that those services can be delivered digitally as well. And for this kind of services, we have also two indicators, and all of these tables are available in the UNCTAD statistical portal. However, the digitally delivered services, data on this is not necessarily compiled only through the UN Comtrade database, which you have for ICT goods and ICT services, but we also have the possibility to compile this from national statistical authorities through the Common Services Trade dataset. And there has been some work done in terms of measuring the importance of digitally deliverable services in the context of overall services exports in countries. And I'll go into that shortly. So as I mentioned, although the ICT sector data is fairly well established and available from the UN Comtrade database, all the other indicators that rely on data collection through business surveys from national statistical offices, those indicators we are sorely in need of. We have very, very few developing countries that have this information. We have a fairly good data set for Eurostat countries and OECD countries, but developing countries are still struggling to make digital economy indicators a regular part of their data collection. For CIS states, we have had, fortunately, already data provided by Azerbaijan, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russian Federation, and Moldova. So 6 countries among CIS states. But the latest available data is from 2017 or 2019, depending on the country. In the case of digital economy indicators, it's very much like the data on household use of ICT that was explained by Esperanza earlier. It's not data that is necessarily updated every year. It's as part of a business survey. It's usually data that is expensive to collect and produce. So we have a data compilation exercise every 2 years because we realize that not all countries will be able to update this information every year. And the latest data compilation that has been launched by UNCTAD is this year. We've just reached out earlier in this month to national statistical offices, asking them to provide a respondent, a counterpart that will be receiving credentials to fill an online questionnaire throughout the month of September. So if you haven't been contacted or you are not aware, probably your national statistical offices have already been contacted, at least at the director level, and shortly, hopefully, we will have respondents from all of your countries that will be able to provide us some updated information on the digital economy during the month of September. So as I mentioned, we have this compilation, the data that we compiled gets published in the UNCTAD statistical portal. This is a screenshot that you have on the right-hand side of what it looks like. And this is freely available, open to everyone. You just have to go to the UNCTAD statistical portal and play with the numbers and look for your countries and see what data is available there. So, and for that, for the UNCTAD statistical portal, I will also send the link through the chat as soon as this presentation is over. So regarding capacity building on digital economy indicators, since we are aware that many developing countries do not have the data available, are not collecting the data, some of it is because they don't have the resources. They have still not included digital economy indicators as part of the regular statistical production, but also there may be a lack of skills or a lack of understanding of what exactly digital economy is, what is the statistical approach to measuring digital economy, what part of the digital economy, like I said, we can quantify and what we cannot, and how is it published and how can it be used by the country itself to benchmark and to compare with others. So UNCTAD tries to fill that gap and help countries through training and capacity building. We have an online course and a face-to-face course that are both based on the UNCTAD manual. The structure of the online course is, I suspect, very similar to that of the ITU, except that we do not have a freely open course. This course gets launched periodically, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then we have face-to-face courses that are usually delivered at a regional level and were basically put on hold during the pandemic, and we are hoping that we will have enough resources to start implementing them again face-to-face in the next few years. We also have a handbook on measuring digital trade that we have co-authored with 3 other international organizations, so UNCTAD, WTO, IMF, and the World Bank have collaborated in this handbook that provides guidance on measuring digital trade. There is not currently a course, but the knowledge transfer of what is contained in this handbook has been done mainly through workshops, either national or regional workshops. And I will also provide a link to this handbook shortly. And we have provided some technical assistance to countries that have been interested in conducting a survey on digitally delivered exports. As I said, in order to measure whether digitally delivered exports are a significant part of their export profile and how to best develop that. And we also provide guidance or advice on surveys of ICT business, for example, on survey design, on sample design, and countries can reach out to us to ask for this specific technical advice or assistance. I mentioned the online course. We have only delivered this course once last year in 2022. It was a pilot delivery for Pacific Island states. It went very well. And it was based on the manual. We had 4 modules that were delivered over 1 month. And it was self-paced but moderated. So there was intervention by UNCTAD consultants and by UNCTAD staff to make sure that the participants were following with the content, were understanding the content, and we had a closing seminar where we were able to exchange and discuss with them what was learned. Regarding training on the manual, as I said, subject to funding, we hope to be able to offer not only the online course in other regions, but also the in-person training, because that requires not only the course material in English. In order to adapt it to the region, especially for developing countries, we need to account for translation. And whenever we use training consultants, they have to be people that speak the language and are able to impart the knowledge to national statistical offices. Then after the training, online training in the Pacific, for example, we have some follow-up to see if countries realize that they would like some one-on-one bilateral technical assistance to make sure that they are able to produce these indicators eventually. And for example, in the Pacific, we had a follow-up request from Samoa, which we are working with in order to have them include digital economy indicators in their next business survey. Then, as I said, we also offer advice and support on surveying business usage. But we also have had technical assistance requests that stem from other areas of our work. We have, as you know, UNCTAD is a policy-oriented organization. So countries come to us for advice and research and knowledge about trade policy and economic policy. And in that context, when we are requested an e-commerce strategy or advice on digital economic policy, we are often also requested with support in measuring digital economy and e-commerce. So we also offer technical assistance regarding that area in the context of the digital trade readiness assessments that we do. As I mentioned, we have this handbook on measuring digital trade that is now available. There was the first version a few years ago, but this one is fresh off the oven. It is a renewed, it's a version 2 that just came out last month. And the most important thing is that it provides agreed approaches on a simplified definition of what is digitally delivered trade, on the use of ICT business surveys, and it provides a reporting template for those countries that wish to report on digital trade. We have, in addition to the handbook on measuring digital trade and the manual on the core indicators, we have technical material that may be of interest to you. Technical notes on ICT for development, they're called, but they're very much on the statistics issues. For example, we have this technical note on implementing a survey on exports of ICT-enabled services. This is the work that we have done already with Costa Rica, India, and Thailand. Costa Rica has since adopted this survey as a regular part of its statistical production because they, policy-wise, they are invested in increasing the role of ICT services and digitally delivered services in their economic production. As I said, we have technical assistance is demand-based, so we provide assistance when countries approach us and request for it. This offers an overview of what we have right now and have had in recent years. As you will see, the Russian Federation and the CIS states are not very well represented. So I encourage you, if you wish to have our assistance, please contact us directly, and we will explain how to best approach us to request help in this regard. So I mentioned we have some ongoing work where you could get involved in order to develop your digital economy statistics. Very similar to the ITU, EGH, and ECTI, the expert groups that will take place now in September, UNCTAD has a fairly young, recent working group. It's the UNCTAD Working Group on Measuring E-commerce and the Digital Economy, which is trying to achieve some sort of consensus between experts from national statistical offices and from international organizations to advance methodology and the availability of indicators on the digital economy. This working group is meeting the next time in late November, early December 2023, 13 November to 1st December, but registration will only open at the end of this month. I will send you a link to the working group of previous editions of the working group, but registration and invitations will only be opened at the end of September for this year. The working group also has a task group measuring the value of e-commerce, which is an area that is of interest to CIS states and other Central Asian countries. We also have a very recent paper linked to the work of this task group on measuring the value of e-commerce. This paper, Measuring the Value of E-commerce, is meant to be a base document that we will build upon in order to develop methodology to measure the value of e-commerce, which is still one of those areas of the digital economy that is partly visible and partly invisible. We can account for some parts of e-commerce, but we cannot account for other parts. And this will have to be a work in progress. I'm not going to go into this because I believe my time is running out. Just to let you know that this UNCTAD compilation I mentioned earlier of digital economy statistics is going to be also opened online for the first time this year. So make sure that your country is represented. CIS states have responded positively to the compilation in the past when it was done through email and an Excel questionnaire. This time, the questionnaire will be filled online, not very different from the way that it's done with ITU right now. So I would encourage your organization, so if you're aware if your organization is the one that is responding to this questionnaire this year, to make sure that the data is included so that you are visible in the UNCTAD statistical portal. The email is down there in this slide, emeasurement@unctad.org. So you can contact us at any time if you have any questions. Then just to mention quickly, to finish my presentation, that right after the working group in 30 November, 1 December, there will be the UNCTAD e-commerce week, which is a meeting where multiple stakeholders, it's not only governments, but also civil society and international organizations, meet to discuss issues that are of relevance to e-commerce and the digital economy for development, And it usually includes discussions on measurements, on data, on the data economy, and we encourage you to follow because it's a very rich and interesting opportunity to find out what are the latest trends in this evolving digital economy, and sessions can be followed remotely. You can register now already at ontat.org eWeek 2020. So that's it for me, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Yes, the indicators on the ICT sector, specifically imports and exports of ICT goods and ICT services, they are not requested from the national authorities because they are already available in the UN Comtrade database. The UN Comtrade database is fed by trade statistics from customs authorities, and those we just extract what is relevant to what is defined as ICT services sector and ICT goods sector. So in that case, we don't request directly from the authorities. The data is already available. I can send you the link to the UN Comtrade database if you want to see the wider database, but if you only want to see the tables on ICT goods and ICT services trade, then you can go to the ONTAD statistical portal where I have just shared the link on the chat. Yes, ICT services are extracted from existing databases. We are not asking countries. However, we have worked with 3 countries, which I mentioned, Costa Rica, Thailand, and India, that have conducted surveys on digitally deliverable exports, services exports, but that is only available for those 3 countries. However, the tables on digitally deliverable services that are available online in the UNCTAD statistical portal, we don't request it from countries, we compile from existing databases.
Sorry, it was a wrong hand. I have no question. Thank you.